Exactly a week ago, Apple released first public beta of iPadOS 14. And since iPad is not my main computing device, I'm using Mac most of the time, I didn't really hesitate with installing beta on it, and I got it running right after it was available. Therefore, I have it now running on my 11-inch iPad from 2018. And in this video, I would like to give you some of my first impressions using it, as well as tell you a little bit more about the features coming to the iPad. So as you can see on the home screen, there are a few changes, but there is not that much that change, at least at the first glance. So of course we have a new widget pane. Similar to how it works on iPhone, I can also create a smart stack or just a normal stack that I can scroll through. And these are only the pinned widgets, so we can pin a widget that has 4x4 size. You cannot pin more than that, but of course you have more widgets that are available when you scroll down. So here I have the battery widget, I have the new shortcuts widget, that it's kind of empty because I'm using folders in shortcuts, which is also one of the newer features. And the rest of the stuff here are the old widgets. So they have a little bit different look. The corners are not as rounded, for example, and there is no longer an option to pin those. So you have to have this here, otherwise there is no other way to use them. And I'm not entirely sure what Apple is going to do with these old widgets after iOS 14 and iPadOS 14 are released. Maybe they're gonna leave them as a legacy feature or just get rid of it completely. And as for the rest of the home screen, there are no other changes, so you cannot put the widgets onto the home screen. So we can go to the jiggle mode, as Craig Federighi says. We can tap on the plus button, and if we're gonna try adding a new widget, for example, let's say the music one, I cannot just simply drop it in between the icons. So I have to put it here or here, and yeah, I just broke everything. But let's put it here. But there is no way of having these widgets on the home screen. And that's a current limitation of iPadOS 14. Maybe in iPadOS 15 or in one of the point updates that will change. But for now, that's what we got. And that also means that there is no app gallery. So if you're gonna swipe to the right, there is no second page on my iPad home screen, but there is also no app gallery. So even if you have multiple home screens, there is no way to just access the same category layout as you can find on iOS 14. And to be honest, that's kind of a bummer, since I really like the app gallery and how it works on iPhone. There are also quite a few changes that make the whole interface more compact, as well as bring it a bit closer to macOS. So for example, search interface now looks exactly the same as on macOS. So for example, we can type in The Barn, which is a coffee chain here in Berlin. And as you may see, the results do not pop up anymore at the first glance. So we have a bunch of different results from Safari, but there is no other results like Apple Maps. For that, I have to press return, and then only I can see all the different results from apps on my iPad, as well as Apple Maps, etc. And to be honest, I don't like this change that much. I really like how it looks, but I don't like that I have to take an extra action just to see my results. And search or spotlight is just one of the newer things when it comes to the interface. There's also a new Siri interface. So now it takes only bottom part of the screen where there's this blob. How's the weather for tomorrow in Berlin? And if we tap on it, we can see the weather forecast for upcoming days. And of course, we cannot launch the weather app on the iPad because there's no weather app on the iPad. That didn't change. And when it comes to changes that are bringing iPadOS closer to macOS, there is quite a few when it comes to navigation around the apps. So for example, when we go to an app like Notes, you can see that there is a new sidebar. And here I have to mention that I have 11-inch iPad Pro, not the 12.9-inch. The 12.9-inch looks a little bit different. So for example, if we tap here to test, I'm going to add a new note. And if I swipe back, I cannot interact with the note anymore. It's slightly grayed out. And on iPads with 12.9-inch screen, you can still interact with the whole app, no matter where you are in the interface and if the third column is visible or not. But Apple Notes is not the only app that has the new sidebar. So if you go, for example, to Photos, you can see that the sidebar features all the different media types, as well as your albums, shared albums, and other things. And there is also a button that allows you to hide the sidebar in case you don't need it. And you can find the same type of interface on many different apps on iPadOS, like Mail, Calendar, for example, files as well. And in my opinion, it makes navigating inside of apps much faster. It's way closer to Mac for sure. And I also really like there's no longer the tab at the bottom. So inside of the photos, there used to be a few icons that you had to switch in between. Now everything lives in the sidebar and it's much easier to navigate between the different sections of the app. And as for other changes made to iPadOS, are those made to the Apple Pencil. And here I have to say that I'm not the biggest user of Apple Pencil. I don't really draw or use it for handwriting. But I think iPadOS 14 is something that will change it for me and for many other people who will also start using Apple Pencil a bit more to navigate around the interface. So the first big change is addition of Scribble. So if you're familiar with how Scribble works on the Apple Watch, you're basically able to write text using your finger. And now on the iPad you can do the same with Apple Pencil. So I can, for example, write Twitter inside of any text field on the iPad, and then it's going to look for it inside of the search. And that works in many different places inside of the interface. So for example, when I'm inside of Twitter, I can write a tweet using the Apple Pencil. So my handwriting is not perfect and Scribble sometimes have troubles recognizing it, but for most of the time it works quite well. And also you are able to edit the text after you type it in with the pencil. So for example, I can scratch something out, I can select some text, or I can join in. And if you go to pencil settings by clicking here, you can actually go through a tutorial that explains to you how to use it. So you have to tap on learn more on using Apple Pencil for text input. And then you have a tutorial that's going to explain to you how to use it and how to use all the different gestures like deleting. So you can see that's scratching it out. There is selecting with drawing a line or drawing a circle around something. There is insert that allows you to paste more text. And there is join that allows you to join or separate words. And Scribble is just one part of the story, but there's also a lot of changes coming to the Notes app, as well as to Pencil Kit and all of the apps that are using it for the Apple Pencil support. So if you open the Notes app in the note that I created before, we can put it into the full screen. You can see the tool for Scribble as the first one, so it has the A letter on it, but we can still use one of the other tools available here. And now the handwriting recognition on iPadOS 14 is much smarter. So I can again type in Okay, and again my handwriting is not that good, but now I can just tap and hold and I can select the whole thing using my finger. And now I have an option to cut it, copy or delete as a drawing. I can also select something as a text. And now if I go back to home screen, I can paste the text using Spotlight. And that works surprisingly well. That can also work for things like dates and URLs. So if you're gonna use the same note to write a URL, for example, to my own website, so I can just write it down using Apple Pencil, and as you can see, it's recognized by the OS. And I can go to the website, but again, because of my terrible handwriting, it wasn't recognized. So in case you care, the URL is just my last name. But we can go back to notes and there's actually a few more additions here. And one of my favorite ones are shapes. So before, when we wanted to draw a shape, we just had to draw a shape like this. And that was supposed to be a rectangle, that didn't work that well. That's more of a rectangle. And we didn't really have an option to make a perfect drawing of a shape. But now if we do the same thing, you can see that it's very easy to draw a perfect rectangle. And that works for other things like lines. It also works for things like clouds or circles in that case. You just have to remember to hold it at the end of the line. And that works for many different shapes. Again, for example, star, it works for hearts. But of course, there's also many other shapes than just those. And as for the rest of iPadOS, there are actually a lot of changes coming to both iPad and iPhone that I didn't cover in this video, like changes coming to messages, maps, and so on. But for them, I want to make a separate video where I'm going to get a closer look at the changes on the iPhone. And to summarize the changes coming to the iPad, as someone who is not really using it as their primary device, I have to say that they're really nice additions, even though I don't heavily rely on the iPad, especially on Apple Pencil. But I think for people who use it for drawing, who are artists, suddenly the device is becoming even more useful. And we saw a lot of new changes coming with the support for mouse cursors, But of course now the primary method of input for many other people, such as Apple Pencil, can be more utilized for inputting text around the whole interface. And that's great, and I really like it. And I think that I will even start using Apple Pencil a bit more myself to take advantage of that. And as I said before, I'm also a huge fan of the changes coming to navigation inside of the apps. I think it was really needed, and it really brings macOS and iPadOS a bit closer, and it makes navigating inside of the apps much easier and faster. And if you're wondering if you should install the beta on your own iPad, I would still wait a bit. Even though it works quite well with native apps from Apple, you may have some issues with third-party apps. And I didn't really test that many of them since I'm not really using anything besides what you can see on this screen here. But for example, if you're relying on something for work, like Procreate, or some other Adobe tools, you might run into some problems. And for example, inside of Fresco, I noticed that top bar doesn't really work that well. And these drawings are not mine, just in case they are my girlfriend's. But you may run into more serious issues, so if you rely on iPad for your work, I would just wait until the final release and updates to the apps that you use. If you have any questions regarding iPadOS 14, I'm happy to help. Otherwise, next week I will post a video about iOS 14 on iPhone. So if you have any questions regarding that, let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you need a small recap regarding all the things that Apple announced during the WWDC keynote, you can watch my video here, where I went through all the announcements made by Apple during the keynote. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.